Hello and welcome back. It is the last section of chapter 2, titled The Meaning of the Last Judgment. I can't even begin to tell you how much this section shifted my way of thinking and how much joy it brings me. If there was ever a section, like a video of mine that went viral, I hope it's this one. So I hope that you find it as enlightening and encouraging and life changing as I did. Paragraph 1. One of the ways in which you can correct the magic miracle confusion is to remember that you did not create yourself. So if you recall, it was in sections 4 and 5, I believe, of this chapter, chapter 2. It talked about magic and how essentially the way A Course in Miracles uses the term magic is you are denying your true power and putting your belief in something outside of you that you kind of give magical properties. I actually love using the word magic and applying it to myself because I think in a lot of ways that people use the word magic is to describe their power. Like it almost like you have your own kind of magic and it's a way of describing your true creative power. So I just felt like pointing that out, that I don't think using the term magic is bad because it depends on the context in which it's used. So anyway, so the way to correct the magic miracle confusion, according to A Course in Miracles and the way magic is described in A Course in Miracles, is to remember that you did not create yourself. You are apt to forget this when you become egocentric. And this puts you in a position where a belief in magic is virtually inevitable. Your will to create was given you by your creator. And we've gone over this a few times now. You were imbued, when he created you, you were imbued with the same loving will to create. So your will to create was given you by your creator, who was expressing the same will in his creation. Since creative ability rests in the mind, everything you create is necessarily a matter of will. So everything you create, you will to create. It also follows that whatever you alone make is real in your own sight, though not in the mind of God. So in true creation, he gave us his will to create, and it is now our will to create in like manner. And so it's really not us creating alone. It's almost like him creating through us. So when we create something on our own, and we're not using that will to create, it's a miscreation and not, so it doesn't even exist in the mind of God because it wasn't truly created and doesn't technically exist. This basic distinction leads directly into the real meaning of the Last Judgment. The real meaning. This is so good. Paragraph 2. It's going to get good. I mean, it's not good yet. The really good stuff is coming. Paragraph 2. The Last Judgment, and Last Judgment is capitalized here. The Last Judgment is one of the most threatening ideas in your thinking. This is because you do not understand it. Judgment is not an attribute of God. It was brought into being only after the separation, when it became one of the many learning devices to be built into the overall plan. So God doesn't need judgment. Everything he makes is perfect, so why would he need to judge between things? I'm assuming that's what that means. But when the separation happened, which didn't actually happen, but when we believed we became separate, then judgment became one of the many learning devices. Or the Last Judgment was one of the learning devices built into the plan. Just as the separation occurred over millions of years, the Last Judgment will extend over a similarly long period and perhaps an even longer one. Whoa. I didn't realize that the separation occurred over millions of years. So this Last Judgment is going to take as long or longer, most likely. Its length can, however, be greatly shortened by miracles. because that's what miracles do. They shorten time. The device for shortening but not abolishing time. If a sufficient number become truly miracle-minded, this shortening process can be virtually immeasurable. So instead of taking millions of years, we could shorten it if enough of us became miracle-minded to like this tiny little amount of time. I just think that's so cool. It is essential, however, that you free yourself from fear quickly, because you must emerge from the conflict if you are to bring peace to other minds. And remember again, in our last section, the conflict is between love and fear, because love is the absolute complete love. Like true love is the complete absence of fear, and fear is a complete absence of love. So you can't have both, and that's the conflict that we're in right now, is trying to like which one's going to win, and which one is going to win in our own mind, essentially. So you must emerge from the conflict. You must free yourself from fear quickly, because you must emerge from the conflict if you are to bring peace to other minds. Paragraph 3. The Last Judgment is generally thought of as a procedure undertaken by God. Actually, it will be undertaken by my brothers with my help. And again, this is Christ speaking. It is a final healing rather than a meting out of punishment, however much you may think that punishment is deserved. Punishment is a concept totally opposed to right-mindedness. And the aim of the Last Judgment is to restore right-mindedness to you. Punishment has nothing to do with the Last Judgment. Hold on, it'll explain. The Last Judgment might be called a process of right evaluation. It simply means that everyone will finally come to understand what is worthy and what is not. After this, the ability to choose can be directed rationally. Until this distinction is made, however, the vacillations between free and imprisoned will cannot but continue. So as long as we don't understand what is worthy and what is not, we're going to keep vacillating between free and imprisoned will. Like we think that we're unworthy, and that's not true. We are worthy. We were created perfect. We are absolutely worthy, but we don't think we are. So as long as we have this confusion between what's worthy and what isn't, we're going to keep miscreating, like going between creating truly and miscreating. Paragraph 4. The first step toward freedom involves a sorting out of the false from the true. This is a process of separation in the constructive sense and reflects the true meaning of the apocalypse. Okay, so sorting out the false from the true. This is a process of separation in the constructive sense. So separation, like believing that we're separated from God, that is not constructive. That is only destructive. But separating what is false from what is true, that's a separation that is actually constructive. And that's the true meaning of the apocalypse, is just separating the false from the true. Everyone will ultimately look upon his own creations and choose to preserve only what is good, just as God himself looked upon what he had created and knew that it was good. At this point, the mind can begin to look with love on its own creations because of their worthiness. At the same time, the mind will inevitably disown its miscreations, which, without belief, will no longer exist. So basically, the Last Judgment is you looking at your own creations and realizing what is true creation and what is actually good, and what is miscreation and is not good. And you will disown what wasn't good and go, oh, wow, yeah, that wasn't good. We're going to disown that, which it will then cease to exist because it was a miscreation, so it's not eternal. And ta-da, that's the Last Judgment. It's not God judging you and saying whether you're good or bad. I think when it's talking about like the parable of the wheat and the tares, and how, it'll be sorted out, the wheat from the tares. And we have always believed that that means a sorting out of people, like the good people from the bad people. That is not what the Last Judgment is about. It's about you, each of us individually, looking at everything we have made and being able to tell what is worthy, which is true creation, things that we created truly and are good and loving, and the things that were miscreations and based on illusions and misperceptions and weren't true, and just deciding to keep what's good. And that's the last judgment, deciding to keep what is good and only what is good. And after that, we don't need judgment anymore because then we only have the good things and we've learned to only continue to only create good. So, God, isn't that beautiful? Okay. Paragraph 5. The term Last Judgment is frightening not only because it has been projected onto God, but also because of the association of quote unquote last with death. This is an outstanding example of upside down perception. If the meaning of the Last Judgment is objectively examined, it is quite apparent that it is really the doorway to life. Pay attention to this next sentence. No one who lives in fear is really alive. So, Last Judgment, thinking that that means that God is going to look at us and think that we are not good and discard us, couldn't be further from the truth. Once we go through our own Last Judgment and discard everything that isn't love, so discard all fear, that's when we truly start living. Right now, we're not really living. Again, we're sleeping in a dream and having some pretty awful nightmares. We're not really living until we go through this Last Judgment and give up, disown all of our miscreations. I don't know. Is anyone else just awed by this concept? Okay. Your own Last Judgment cannot be directed toward yourself because you are not your own creation. You can only look at your creations and decide what is good and what is bad. You cannot look at yourself and decide if you are good or bad. Only God can do that. And He already did, and He already said you're good. You can, however, apply it meaningfully and at any time to everything you have made and retain in your memory only what is creative and good. You don't have to wait until the end of your life or whatever to do a Last Judgment kind of thing. At any time, you can look at anything and everything that you have made and retain in your memory only that which is good and full of love, and just release the rest. You can do that anytime. Maybe we should do that today. This is what your right-mindedness cannot but dictate. The purpose of time is solely to, quote, give you time, close quote, to achieve this judgment. It is your own perfect judgment of your own perfect creations. When everything you retain is lovable, there is no reason for fear to remain with you. This is your part in the atonement. So let me read it again. When everything you retain is lovable, there is no reason for fear to remain with you. This is your part in the atonement. Remember, the atonement is the undoing of everything that is not true and not real and not lovable. So once you retain only what is lovable and you've released all fear, you have done your part in the undoing of everything that is fear. Right? This is your part in the atonement, is this Last Judgment. How exciting of a Last Judgment is that? And we can do it at any time. And then, so it had said in, paragraph 3, the Last Judgment is generally thought of a procedure undertaken by God. Actually, it will be undertaken by my brothers with my help. Okay? By my brothers with my help. So Christ is helping us to achieve this Last Judgment, to get to that place where we can discern what is actually good and true and creative and what is unworthy of us, all of our miscreations. This made me think back in chapter 1, section 2, in paragraph 3. Christ is talking and says, "There is nothing about me that you cannot attain. I have nothing that does not come from God. The difference between us now is that I have nothing else. This leaves me in a state which is only potential in you." So Christ, there's nothing about Christ that we can't attain. So in this sense, I believe that Christ is almost a term that can be used for anyone. It's not like only Jesus gets to be Christ. Jesus is a Christ. Maybe Buddha was a Christ. Maybe, like there may be other people on the planet who have achieved Christ, like that level. And I think the way he got to be Christ is through a last judgment, because he says, "I have nothing that does not come from God." So he has released anything, right? He's made a judgment. He's released anything that was not truly creative and loving. He only has what came from God, what he created with the same will that God creates, that they kind of created together. That's all he has. He's released everything else. Doesn't that sound like the Last Judgment? So the difference between us and Christ now is that he has nothing else, and we still have a bunch of our miscreations. So once we go through this last judgment, our own last judgment, we've done our part in the atonement, and then we probably also can help our brothers, just like Christ is helping us. We become a Christ and are then helping others to be able to discern and to make that last judgment themselves. I could be wrong. I hope no one's like freaking out because I'm calling us Christ. But that, I don't know, it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me, and it's super exciting. Because growing up, I was raised to try and be like Christ, but always with kind of this caveat of, but we'll never attain it in this life. And so I don't know, there's something about this that makes me want to try even harder, because I think it can be attained, and I'm meant to attain it. It's not arrogant of me to say that I want to be Christ or exactly like Christ. If you want to give me a different name because it freaks you out that I just said I want to be Christ, it can be any term. I don't really care. But I can be like Christ. And I think we can do it in this life if we have that desire. And if we're willing to give up all of these miscreations that we have, which, I mean, we have a whole nother, there's like 670 pages in this text, and we're on page 35. So there's a lot more information that will help us kind of get our minds to that place. But I don't know, I just absolutely love this section. It is so empowering, and it is so full of hope, and it is so not judgmental. Even though it's called the Last Judgment, it's not judging our worthiness. It's us judging the worthiness of our creations, and only the good will remain. But the fact that we're here means that we are good, and that's why we are even here at all. So we don't need to worry that we're going to come before God and he's going to deem us unworthy, because if that were the case, we just wouldn't exist. So anyway, I'm going to stop rambling now. I could just go on and on about this section, but I'm excited to see you next time as we start chapter 3, which is called The Innocent Perception. So hope to see you next time. Please comment anything, any ahas or any questions, or, if you super disagree with me, that's okay too. You can comment those things as well. I don't mind having a healthy discussion.